Hey YouTubers, thanks for watching the channel. So today we're going to give a go at putting in the right hand side engine mount. Depending on if that's right hand drive, it's on the driver's side, left hand drive passenger side, and on the OM642 it's pretty hidden away. So you might have seen the other video, I'm not sure if I'll split them, doing the left hand side engine mount. This time doing the right hand side engine mount. It is right down there. Not sure you can see that there. You might just be able to see that there. Okay, so to get to that, we're going to do a few things. First off, going to take off this air cleaner and take the cover off that engine mount, and that'll allow us to access the top nut, maybe from the top, certainly from the bottom, and then I'll be getting underneath and showing you what we're going to do to be able to pull that mount out, because one option is take the alternator off. Don't really fancy that. Got to take the thermostat off as well. It won't come up the side of the engine, so the best way to take this one out is to take the exhaust off. And on this engine there's just one exhaust on the right hand side off the back of the turbo. Pull that out and then get the engine mount out that way. Okay, so we'll get on with getting this top half apart, getting the cover off, and then I'll show you what we're going to do underneath. Let's get to it. Okay, so we made a bit more room now. So on this side of the engine, it's got these I think they're E10s. Just check that for you. Yeah, E10s. So I've got the E10 on my socket, and there's two of those. The one at the front is this one. The one at the back is this one, which is captive. And if you just whip those two out on the right hand side of the engine, you can just undo these clips, and it's pretty cool because you can lift out the whole air cleaner. You can see there it just goes on these studs on the bottom. So just shoot two little plastic studs, and they go into those two little circles. Probably can see that one if I tilt that down a little bit. So now we've got some better access. Not great, but better. And now we'll be going down in here, and we'll be undoing these little bolts on this metal cover, which is on top of the engine mount there. So you can just see that shining. So I'll get in there, I think that's another E10, and get those out, and then we'll have a look at the top of the mount. Okay, so we got those three E10s out. They look like that. And when those are out, then you're able to lift this bracket out. So, call it a bracket, it's a shield really. So these two are visible. I have no idea how I'm going to get this one back in, because you can't see anything. So I think we might be gluing the bolt to the end of the spanner there. It was that far in, to give you an idea. So the ratchet's out there, and we've got, what, 120mm of extension. So looking forward to getting that one back in. Okay, so once you've got that out, then you can see maybe just down there the two bolts are curing from below and the bolts are curing from above. And I can see a bit of oil on it, which is sort of hopeful that it's failed. We'll see how we go once we get it jacked up and get that one out. Okay. So the next question is, how do you access that engine mount from below? And I'll tell you, the first thing you have to do is remove your front cover. That one sits just underneath the radiator. Your center cover, that one sits just under the engine. That's the jacking point. Your middle cover, that one sits just under the subframe at the rear of the engine, and that's the gearbox noise attenuator. You have to remove the side underskirts or underguards, so there's one on the left and one on the right. All of these are held by 10mm plastic nuts, 10mm bolts, or the front parts 8mm plastic bolts. And then finally you have to remove the gearbox crossmember. So that is bolted to the to the chassis on this side, bolted to the tunnel in the middle, and bolted to the back of the gearbox in the center. So all of that needs to come out so that you can get the exhaust out, so you can access that engine mount. So good luck if you send this to your dealer. You're going to be spending a little bit of money on that. But we'll just get under the car and have a look at the exhaust and see where I've got to. Okay, I thought it was easier to drag the exhaust out from under the car. So the exhausts come out so that you can get your hand up through here, up towards that engine mount, which is sitting about there. You have to take off this top clip, which is really hard to access. So you have to reach your hand up if you're lucky, up this gap. Your hand's blocked by this shield. Not sure if I can get that on after. That might be the trick, and I'll show you what that looks like. Also blocked by this bracket, which holds the sensor pipes, which are going to here and here for the pressure sensing. You have to take off this exhaust temperature sensor. This one's here at the front of the DPF. You have to take off the NOx sensor here. That's the rear pressure sensor. You have to take off the urea injector, which is here. And you have to take off the rear flange. So once you've got all that out of the way, then I'll be able to show you underneath. The one cool thing you can do is you can inspect your DPF. So there's a couple of little bits of crud in there, but otherwise not too bad. And you can also inspect your catalyst when you're under the car and give that a look. Okay, so I'll get underneath now and show you some of the room we've got, and we'll get on with this engine mount. Okay, back to front. I'll show you when these go back together, but this is the rear mounting ring. So we've got a seal in there, and we've got that clamping ring on the rear of the exhaust pipe. I've got the gearbox just held on this axle stand at the moment. I had to use the second axle stand to hold the exhaust while I was putting it in. But what is good is that there's an exhaust mount back there, holds the rear pipe all in place. You can leave this temperature sensor in place, and if you just look in there, you can see inside my, hopefully you can see inside my catalyst. Just looking okay. Coming forwards through the chassis, here's the mounting bolts for the crossmember. Here's the rear injector. I'm going to give that a little bit of a clean up before we put that back together. Here's the gearbox mount on these two bolts here. They're just held in place. So at the moment we've got a few hundred kilos just held up by that mount. And then coming up we've got the air pressure pipes. We've got the two connectors for the exhaust temperature sensor. I'll show that. Just go back in as we put it all back together. We've got the NOx sensor just tucked up out of the way there. One of my other videos you can see where I changed that earlier in the piece. So that sensor module is sitting here, just above the side panel. And then looking up to the mount, we've got the exhaust flange. That's loose and a bit wobbly now, so we'll just keep that tucked out the way. We've got the 16mm on top of the engine mount, and the two I think they're 14s either side. So now we can get the cable unclipped, we can get the engine jacked up, get that mount out, get the new one in, and we should be well on the way. Just thought worth showing you how I managed to undo that 16. So I just bought these new little set of stubby ratchets, and that is the largest one, the 16 up there. And as you can see, just got the spanner in the back of the teeth there, and that was just enough to get that started and get that undone. So hopefully now I can do it without the extra spanner. So making a right mess of that. We'll try again. There we go. And once you started, that bolt tends to be pretty loose. Just comes out easy as. So we'll lift that one right out. You might have seen on my passenger video, not sure if I'm putting them both together yet, that it was a real problem getting that bolt lined up with the engine mount once I'd lifted the engine up. But we'll see with this one, might be different. We're going to loosen off the left-hand engine mount. The idea behind that, there's the bolt. The idea behind loosening the engine mount is so that it can just rotate a little bit in the aluminium here. So I'm just going to back out these threads pretty much all the way on the other side and just leave that loose, and then I'll get this engine jacked up and we'll see if we can get this mount out. Okay, so we're ready to jack now. One thing I have done on the advice of some of the forums is I've removed this 40 amp fuse. So that goes just up there. And I do know that powers the compressor, but I'm not sure if the suspension will still adjust. So one thing you do find is as you lift the engine up, it lightens the suspension lifts up, and then the sensing system says it's too far and it lets some air out of the springs. So it does mean that the body then goes down, which means the engine goes up further, and it all gets a bit sketchy because you're still jacking and you can't really let the jack down in a hurry. So we'll see how we go. I've got a bit of air going on, I think, already. So you do need to lift the mounts up quite high. I'll show you why in a moment, and get a really big clearance, and then that gives you a chance to get that out. So I don't think I'm going to squash anything at the back there, although it's getting a bit close to the bulkhead already. The other side again, the left hand side was much easier. Rotated the engine over, took the dipstick out, and the engine rocked quite a lot. So we'll just watch while that goes up a little bit. You can see that's already getting super close to that bulkhead. In fact, I can hear it on the bulkhead. That's about as far as I can go. And I really hope the suspension doesn't adjust. Especially when my hand's in there and I've taken the engine mount out. Any ideas, anybody? Not sure I've got the solution to that. Might just wait a minute, see if the suspension settles. Can always drop the jack down in a hurry. We'll see how we go. Okay, so finally it's out, and that took the best part of an hour, I would say, to get that out. And that's because I've got the engine jacked right against the bulkhead there, as tight as you could be. Jacked up on my 2-ton, 3-ton trolley jack, just up under the engine there, so you can see. Don't know if you can see that. And then at the back here, just on a couple of axle stands. And really, it was doing a lot of squeaking to get that in there. So we'll get the new one back in, and we'll try and get... So just looking at that from the top, you might be able to see, I think I'll just pass the camera down so you can see better. You can see the misalignment between the bolt hole and the engine mount. So you can see the engine mount's in position and the engine's really far back. So what we're going to do is lower that down on top of it, and then try and shuffle the engine forward, jack it up a couple of times, just get that top bolt in. Not worry about the bottom bolts at all. They can always be moved around a bit after, once we've got the top bolt in place. Okay, so we'll get on with that and start getting things back together. Okay, so just talking about mounting the mount up and lowering it down. It's a lot easier if you bolt it to the engine first. You can bolt it to the subframe, but inevitably you'll never get that top bolt in. And I just had a heap of trouble getting that to that stage there. So, a bit easier, just put it in like that. It's just a bit loose, I can't reach down there. I'll just try and get down there and show you. So it's just flapping around in the wind a little bit at the moment. Keep your eye on the tab at the top, because that's got to go in, but more importantly, once I get those bottom bolts about right, I'm going to get underneath and start those as well. Okay, so let's lower that down a little bit and see how we go. Okay, sorry for the rattling, and they're all in. So 2 bottom bolts are in. You can see the flanges has just dropped in, those little aluminium nuggets, and that was a bit of a nightmare. Nothing a crowbar and a hammer couldn't fix, but I did have to jack the engine up about 6 times. So top bolt's in, should be just loose. Might need to jack that up again just to get that nice and loose. And we can start putting things back together now. Okay, let's see how we go. Okay, first step at putting all this back together is I just tightened up the 2 screws for the engine mounts on both sides. So I loosened the left and the right, so I got those tightened up. I did put in some Loctite, and I did tighten them up pretty tight. I call that a VT, not an FT. And now I get the chance to run this cable across. So on this side it's a bit trickier. I might have to do this off camera. It's got to go across the top of the drive shaft, clip to the steering gear, the electric power steering. So I can't remember exactly the route it takes, but we'll give this a bit of a go. See if we can just get a sensible routing where it's not going to be rubbing on that drive shaft, and get it across to the front, because we don't want that damaged and need to get in there and change that mount again. Okay, I'll just get that done off camera. We'll just have a look there. It seems to go just on top of that frame rail there. Yeah, so it just tucks in there nicely. I'll show you if you can see my finger. I can get it in there, out of the way. Get that through to the front. One thing that was a bit weird, or is a bit weird, is those wires don't come out in the most logical position. They're at the back of the sensor. Not sure if you can see that. They tend to come out. Yeah, that might be a bit better. They tend to come out there. And it's not very good there, is it? I can see a bit of the red inside there. That connector's pulled back a bit. Oh, it's actually pulled out. Okay, we'll see if we can get that tucked back in. But that's just where it routes around. So I don't think there's anything to worry about. That would have happened during all that wrangling of getting that sensor in position. But we're not doing that again, are we? Okay, let's get that cable clipped in place and get it connected up the front. And then we can move on to tightening up the engine mount on top. Okay, not sure how good you can see here, but I've managed to get a cable tie through that same hole that was used on the old engine mount, just up that end. And I've got the cable tie, got the connector mounted through the hole here on the front sub harness. So that's all good, quite happy with that routing. No chance of that getting caught on anything now. In fact, if anything, it's a bit too high. So just pull that down a bit towards the steering gear. Pull that through. There we go. That's looking like a much better routing now. You can probably see better than me how that's going there. Yeah, some random cables around here need cutting off too. Okay, so now we've got that done, we'll just get the mount tightened up on the top and start getting the exhaust back on. Just worth showing you how useful this little stubby ratchet is. Not sure if you can see that there, but it's just about, as somebody on YouTube would say, perfect for this job, and just lets me wind that down nicely. And it's reasonably robust, so I'm going to put the spanner on this and use it for the tightening torque as well, once we get that right down there. So I did put Loctite on the bottom bolts, but I'm not going to bother on the top bolts, being as nothing's coming out once it's in. And what's also good to see is that that's still reasonably loose going down into the mount. So just about there now. There we go. And we'll just get a spanner on there and get that tightened up. It's pretty awkward, but through a combination of the stubby and two straight spanners, 16 mils, I've managed to get that what I consider pretty tight. And if I needed any tighter, I could always do it from the top with one of those custom adapter tools, or I might even cut up one of my spanners. But I'm pretty sure that's quite tight, and I'm going to call that QT, and it's not going anywhere in a hurry. So we'll now move on to putting the exhaust back. So just while we do, there's a couple of things to point out, and this is missed in a couple of the videos online. One trick is getting these two air pressure pipes screwed onto a little bracket that sits on top of the exhaust DPF canister. And the other real tricky thing is getting this coupling ring on, which is just flapping around at the end of the pipe. So we'll get it in and give it a go. You're struggling a bit because this bracket's in the way and you can't take that off, because this is the main subframe mount and it's really screwed in tight. You might just see that there into the body. So this is going nowhere. I have taken this guard off, and this is the one other trick we're going to try, is the guard goes into that clip up the top there and really inhibits your hand access through this area. So I'm going to leave it off. There's one bolt here and one bolt here, you can just see, and I'm going to see if I can get those in after. Now this one I reckon is pretty easy. This one looks a bit impossible, but we'll see if we can just get our hand up and get that in. Definitely can't do it from the top. Sorry, this keeps rattling, and just not sure about that. So I don't know if I can afford to leave that off and it rattles, or what's the go. One bolt should be enough, and there's another little clip just here at the bottom. Not sure if I can move this out of the way. I'll find that clip. No, I think it clips onto one of these pieces of metal here. We'll see. Maybe it's on the actual heat guard itself. So I would like to get that heat shield back in place. It keeps some of the heat off some of these mounts. But realistically, there's plenty of places on this engine where the heat pipes are just near things and there's not a lot of protection at all. Alright, so we'll start on that bit and see how we go. And then move on to sensors once we've got that pipe in place. Okay, so I kind of chickened out on this a little bit. I thought what's the chance of me getting that spanner up under the exhaust when I couldn't even see those bolts before? There's the one and there's the other. So I've decided to put this guard back on, but my plan is if it's annoying me or particularly getting in the way, you definitely can't get your hand through here, look, then I can at least bend it down here and smash it out the way before bending it back up. So that's back on as it's meant to be. There's only that one clip at the top up there, but it was still worth taking off for the mount because it meant I could reach over that a little bit better. So next step, try and get the exhaust back in and see if we can get this coupling ring lined up and these pipes back on the top of the exhaust in that clip. If we could do that next, I'll be pretty chuffed. Okay, we're probably around the midpoint now, and just to show you a few things that really help you out, I've got the gearbox propped up by the axle stand and the jack under there as a secondary safety, because if this comes down, probably won't squash me, but it probably will cause a lot of damage here on this crossmember. I've got the exhaust, just being careful not to bang on the ring there and keep this out of the way. I use this axle stand just to sort of make a bit more room, show you what's going on. Use this axle stand to support the back of the exhaust. That takes a lot of your weight off your body. At the front here, I managed to get, sorry there's not a huge amount of room under here, managed to get the, first thing I did was put in the buffer into this hole. I've just put the nut on there just loose, just for safety, but that sort of takes the whole weight of the exhaust pipe, gets you off to a good start. I didn't notice this before, but there is enough room to get your hand up the side to reach these air pipes down, so I have managed to get those started and I've just got them hand tight, so just happy that those threads are on. Before I did that and got those just loose, ready for tightening up, I hope you can see just up here, I managed to get my hand up here. Not sure the angle you can see from that, I think you might be able to see it there. Get these pipes tucked under the bracket by loosening the 8mm nut, and now if I'm lucky I can just get my 8mm stubby, and if I get that up there, maybe even the ratchet will help on this one. We can get that tightened up. I'm not sure the ratchet will fit. Okay, I'll probably do that off camera. Put that going the wrong way. There we go. Okay, so I'll just get that tightened up so that those pipes are nice and tight. We'll just tighten that off camera, and then by rocking the exhaust over, because it's not fixed at the back, which is the real trick, I can get my hand up and I can get my hand onto the coupling ring there. So that's the next job, is to get the coupling bolt in place, get the coupler on, get that sort of loosened in place and get the bolt lined up enough so I can tighten it from the bottom. And then I think we're well on the way. So after that, get the rear fitting coupled up, and then we can move back onto these sensors. So if ever that front temperature sensor failed, you'd have a lot of fun getting that out. Maybe take the exhaust off, don't know. The rear temperature sensor, that one I took out just for safety, so that one comes over to here, loops around onto this clip, and then we can get the knock sensor back in, which I tucked out the way there, and the urea injector back onto here. And once that's all tightened up, move on to the crossmember. Okay, one step at a time. See if we can get that little 8mm tightened up and get that coupling ring back on. So I'm just struggling with this a little bit. Just thought I'd share this with you. Maybe a bit of moral support will help here. So rear exhaust pipes disconnected, just supported by the axle stand. Front clamp, I'll just pass you up so you can have a look. Hopefully you can see up there. Front clamp is connected. Got that happily together. Just can't get that bolt started, and just trying to get in there to get that going. So it's really hard. You have to hold the clamp with one hand and put the bolt in with the other, and get both hands up there at the same time, which I don't know how anybody does that, but we'll keep trying. A few different ideas. I could put a piece of wire around it and try and pull it together, maybe a cable tie, try and get it started to get the bolt in there, but one way or the other we're going to keep persevering until we get it done. Okay, I'll let you know how we're going in a minute. Okay, I'll take you up there, and I don't even know if I can get the camera in anymore. show you progress. Not sure if that's in focus or what you'll get to see. I'll look at the video later. So I've sort of got the bolt in, not really happy about that. And I've sort of got the clamp in, not really happy about that. But the way I got it to start was to get those cable ties on there and just get that started. So I'm going to come back to that a bit later, just see if I can close that up a bit more with one more cable tie, get that bolt nice and loose, and then maybe we can start tightening that up and seeing if that V-band clamp's going to do its job. Okay, let's get to that. You might just be able to see it through that gap there. No. Alright, I need to recharge some of these lights and get back on it. Okay, so just pass it up here. We'll start that again, but I'm having real trouble with this mounting ring. I don't know if you can see that and how close it is, but I'll try and just hold you there and say to you that I can't get that ring to go properly around the exhaust DPF flange and the downpipe flange, and it's driving me insane. So I think I might take it all apart and have a look, but there's definitely something a bit sus there, and I cannot get that bolt and that clamp to start closing like the one at the rear. But we'll pull a few things apart, have a look and see what we're thinking. The one thing I did do, which you can see from this end, okay, is I did take off this sensor here to make a bit more room. I bent this panel down a little bit, and I also created a little gap up the back. Try and put the screwdriver up there so I could try and see somewhere up here. I'm not sure I'll find the hole now. No, so somewhere up here, so I can try and see up the back there and see what's going on with that flange. Something's not right, and we might be taking all of this off again, but we'll see how we go. Okay, so we finally got there, and I'll just pass you up so you can have a look at what that looks like when it's fitted together. Excuse the rattles as the camera gets up there. I don't know if you can see that, I'll review it on the video. So that's all together nicely now, and the two tricks, it's pretty simple. I don't know if it's in the book, but the two tricks to doing that are pretty straightforward. First of all, take this temperature sensor out. That gives you a lot of room across the middle here. And secondly, keep this guard out. That's the main guard. Sorry for the camera wobble. That's this main guard here. It turns out you can get that guard off and on using a very small little ratchet. There's enough room to push the exhaust out the way. Get your hand up and get that guard in after. If you take that guard out, not only do you get access this way, which you really need, but you also get access up here. Let me just try and show you that. You can get your hand up here and you can feel around, get the seal in place, and you can also get your hand stuck. But when it's not getting stuck, you can actually look up here, and I'll just show you that angle. Maybe you can see it, maybe you can't. This angle up here, and there's one big trick to the whole of this ring, and I only noticed this when I was looking at this back ring, and that is, you can see this slot just here, very little slot, and you can see on the exhaust there's a little tab. I'll just move you up close to that so you can have a look. There's a little tab on the back of the exhaust there, and that means that that ring only goes in one position. That's that position, and if you put it at a different angle like that, it'll stand off on that little nib, and that wasn't very obvious. So I'll show you that again when I've got it all together. But what it really means is on this front one, it lines the bolt up, and that's what's quite clever. It lines the bolt up with the access point here, where you can pass your ratchet through. I don't think I've got that assembled just at the moment. I have. Okay, so you can get your ratchet up there, and without that guard on, you can actually do that bolt up and get that tightened up, just as I'm doing now. Oh, that's just fallen off the bottom. I'll get my spanner on there and finish tightening that up. Sorry if that was a bit of crappy filming. It's not easy when you're under the car and it's all going on. But when you do get it on, you'll know it's on because that gap will close up and you'll be able to put the bolt in. The other thing that worked out really well for me was these cable ties. By putting cable ties instead of the bolt, you can really just put a bit of tension on that spring V-band, pull on those, get them nice and tight, and then as you joggle it around, if you're lucky and it drops in place, they'll just take up that slack. So we'll get those cut off just now, or maybe just pull them off. I'll try one or the other. Okay, the end just broke off. I'll get in there with the screwdriver, get those out the way, because they're obviously going to melt and go on fire later. Okay, so I think we can carry on with the reassembly now. I'm not going to tell you how long that took, because it's embarrassing. Okay, thanks for watching so far, and we'll keep going. Okay, I did just want to show you the best order works here. So I've tightened up the V-band clamp now. All the sensors are out on this side. Haven't tightened up the two air hoses or the exhaust here, but the V-band clamp at the back's tightened up. And then this guard, just wanted to show you how tight a fit it is. It almost looks like it's made to do this. So you slide it up, slide it back. I've got to get it around that pipe, I'll do that in a sec. Hopefully. Okay, might go for a little bit of bending there. And then slide it right to the back and slide it up into that clamp that you should just be able to see up there. Just above there. I'll just try that one more time. It's quite funny because it went before. Okay, I'll get two hands on that and get that in and slid in, get that back on, and then put these sensors in and tighten them up. Right, so there's one thing I didn't do that I might wanted to have done, which is put the cover back over the engine mount up the front there. So I'll try and do that from the top without dropping anything, and see how we go on that one. But otherwise, we've got all the sensors back in. So we've got the front temperature sensor in, the mid temperature sensor in, we've got the air pipes tightened up, we've got the NOx sensor in, we've got the bottom bracket bolted up, we've got the urea injection injector unit tightened up with the clamp, and we've got the rear pipe tightened up with the clamp. So that's all the exhaust back together, and it was a little bit of fun, but I think it'll be a bit easier next time. Getting this bracket back on, this heat shield back on with those little 10mm M10s in there. Sorry, 10mm M6s. They were really hard, but that is a lot easier if you take these two temperature sensors out. So that was the real trick I missed when I kicked off, is all sensors out first, including these, even if the book doesn't say it. Loosen off the top ones, get your hand in, get this guard out, and then you're well on the way. You can get your hand around the V-clamp and you can see what the hell you're doing there. Okay, so we'll get that all finished now, and the next thing is getting the gearbox crossmember back in place. And then side panels, and then we're getting close. All right, let's keep going. Just one last thing on what made the assembly quite a bit easier down there was just trying to hold down the exhaust and keep that pushed and compressed against the joint. And to do that, I use this pole and just put these elastic straps at the top here. So this pole was just pushing, it's a bit hard to see, sorry. This pole was just pushing down and pushing. You might be able to see me just move that there. Pushing down onto the exhaust, and that kept the flange pushed down towards the exhaust pipe. So now we've done that, I can take this off and pull it out. And you might be able to see. This is just an old mop handle. I've just got that pushed down. I just jammed it down there against those pipes, just like that, just in that gap there. Okay, so those are all back on there. One thing I would have done in hindsight probably would have been removing this air valve pressure switch, so that gave a little bit more room. Okay, so crossmember's back in, all 6 bolts on the end of the crossmember, all 4 bolts in the middle of the crossmember, and the 2 nuts on the center mounting for the gearbox. So all 12 of those are in. I did get a bit tricky jacking the gearbox up and put a bit of tension on that thermal temperature probe wire, so I'm hoping that's going to be okay. Exhaust mount's already tightened up before. and now we can get the, sorry for the spin there, we can get the side panels on and start to finish up. So I think we should be good. Just got to do the under bonnet engine mount, so I think we'll do that first and just get that cover on. Okay, let's go for that. How insane is this bit? Trying to get the bracket back on down there, and the front fixing, there's two fixings you can see, you might be able to see them, just there and there, but I've got this extension and it's so impossible to see what's going on that you have to use an endoscope camera to get underneath the manifold so you can see what the hell you're doing. I mean, seriously. I can't quite show you. Maybe I can. Oh, here we go. So we can just, if I stop wobbling the camera, oh goodness, stop it. I can just get the ratchet on that now because I've just about got that hand tight. So while it's there, try and squeeze my hand out. We'll get a ratchet on there. You can't even see that bolt, it's under there. Seriously. Okay, let's get that on, get this manifold back together, fuse box cover back on, then we can put the fuse back in for the compressor, which by the way worked out really well because the air did go down while the car was just sitting here. So these bags are probably soft inside. If I can get my hand to it, I think it's in there. Because the car came down onto these blocks, which I put in earlier. So if you are going to leave your car for a couple of days, just make sure you put some axle stands or some chocks underneath. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, everything's back together on the top, apart from this one fuse. Just left the covers off underneath, so when I start it up I can inspect it. That's what I was talking about the those posts, effectively like footings. So the car's sunk down that far, just in the, I don't know, 10 days. No, not even a week. It's been sitting here. You see the new engine mount up there and up there. And I think we're good to go. So we'll just put this compressor fuse back in, see if the compressor kicks up. Might just kick straight back on. No, I think it's waiting for an ignition signal. Okay, we'll put this fuse cover back on. And once we've inspected all that, we can see if we've got any exhaust leaks, which I'm really hoping we don't. Okay, so we'll see if we can wrap up the video in the next one and just do a quick summary. Okay, mostly together on top of the engine there. Just got to put the cover on and one of the air cleaner ducts. I'm just going to get onto another little job there. And then underneath we've got all of the under trays on. So we've got the front under tray with what, the 10 bolts I think, and the middle under tray and the rear under tray, and that's all back together. So let's get going, and thanks for watching, and hopefully that helped you out if you're going to be changing your engine mounts. Okay, catch you on the channel.